Okay, my name is Laura Gregorick, and I'm CASB's Director of CA Training Office Engagement. My role at CASB involves developing relationships with CA training offices and engaging them in CA student development. And I'll be walking through today's presentation. Jennifer Reed is also with us, and she's the Director of CASB's UFE Prep program. She'll be joining us at the end of today's session, and she'll be addressing your questions. Jennifer is responsible for all aspects of our UFE Prep program, and she's been very busy developing some excellent resources to support our students and help them prepare for the UFE over the summer. And we'll be highlighting a number of those resources during today's session. So we have a number of objectives for our session today. So by the end of our time together, you should be able to recognize the various components of our UFE Prep program. You'll also understand what a student does to prepare for the UFE. You'll understand what you can do to help your students prepare for the UFE. You'll also know what resources are available to assist you and your students, and you'll know how to register for the UFE Prep Mentor module. We do have a full hour together today, but we have about 20 minutes of material. So we will have plenty of time to address your questions, and if you don't have too many, we will finish early. You can submit your questions throughout today's session, and you can do so by using the Q&A menu in your live meeting screen. And as I mentioned earlier, Jennifer Reed will be on hand to answer your questions at the end of the session. You can also download a copy of today's presentation by clicking the handouts icon, and that's in the top right-hand section of your screen. It's the icon that looks like 3 little sheets of paper. So we'll start with an overview of CASB's UFE Prep program. Now, our UFE Prep program spans from late May right up until the UFE dates in mid-September, and it has 3 components. We have the online UFE Prep module, and that contains resources that are situated in Desire to Learn, which is CASB's learning management system. We have the face-to-face classroom sessions, and we also have the evaluated simulations. So students will gain access to the online UFE Prep module next Monday, so that's May 13th, and they'll continue to have access right up until the UFE dates in mid-September. And the module includes a number of resources that are going to help students throughout their study. We have UFE simulations and guides from 2004 onward, and select simulations from before 2007, and all the simulations from 2007 to 2009 have been updated to reflect current standards. And the 2012 UFE report won't be available until late May. We also have technical guides and tutorials for the CASs, CASB, and IFRS, and we have some select technical guides from the first 5 CASB modules as well. And we have several new IFRS guides that have been authored for the 2013 UFE Prep session. We also have 2 additional guides. There's one that outlines steps and tips for approaching a simulation, and we have another for debriefing as well. And we have 2 corresponding planning tutorials that would assist students in approaching a simulation. And there's also access to a facilitator through the site's discussion board and email. So the in-person classroom sessions take place from July 22nd to 26th and July 29th to August 2nd. So students pretty much concentrate on how to approach and debrief UFE simulations during these sessions, and there's also some technical review. The evaluated simulations are another component of UFE Prep, and students write simulations, and reviewers evaluate the simulations and provide students with feedback on their performance for those. Students will write a simulation of the day on Tuesday, July 23rd, and there's only one simulation of the day in 2013. But they'll also write 2 practice evaluations, one on Friday, July 26th, and another on Thursday, August 1st. And the second practice evaluation is held on a Thursday as opposed to the last day of UFE Prep, which is a Friday. And finally, students also write the simulated UFE, and that's from August 6th to 8th, and that's in actual UFE writing centers wherever possible. So the calendar function in the online UFE Prep module highlights key dates for UFE Prep. We've also created a study plan that provides much more guidance to students on when and how they should be using these online resources and what's covered in the classroom portion of our UFE Prep program. So we will cover the study plan in greater detail later in the session. So next we're going to talk about how students can prepare for the UFE, and we're going to highlight some of the resources that are available to assist them. So CASB students have pretty much been preparing for the UFE since the start of Module 1. The technical competencies and the pervasive qualities and skills and the case writing experience that they are gaining in the first 5 modules serves them well when they challenge the UFE. The tasks in Module 5 in particular place specific emphasis on the integration of some complex issues, and students are exposed to UFE simulations throughout that module. And then for students not in Module 5 during the spring session, we have suggested some alternate activities that would help them to prepare during the same period leading up to the UFE Prep face-to-face sessions. And we will cover those in greater detail when we talk about our suggested study plan. So students also participate in CASB's UFE Prep program, and that includes the 3 components we just discussed, the online module that would contain all the resources that would guide students through their self-directed study, the face-to-face sessions, and also the evaluated simulations. And then finally, students would also participate in any internal training office UFE Prep programs or some offered by external providers. So next we'll focus on a number of tools that we've designed to assist students in their UFE study. So these tools include an orientation guide. We have a binder, and that's a tool that we've created to help students track their progress as they study for the UFE. We have a sample study plan within that binder. We also have a guide to approaching a simulation, 2 planning tutorials, a guide to debriefing a simulation. We have updated UFE simulations and evaluation guides. We have various technical resources, and we also have technical moments, and these are short videos that are designed to provide students with some additional guidance on some of the more challenging technical topics. Now, students will use these tools to prepare for the UFE, and you can find them online in the UFE Prep Mentor module, and we'll cover each of these tools in detail. So we have the orientation guide, and that pretty much summarizes what students need to do in order to prepare for the UFE. And so the guide provides an overview of the 3 UFE Prep program components that we just discussed. It also provides an outline of the binder, and it provides a summary of our sample study plan. It provides tips on selecting and working with a mentor, and also guidance on securing some additional support from any colleagues, friends, and family. Now, the binder is a tool that we've created to enable students to track their performance on each simulation, and they also are able to note areas that require some specific attention. The binder is an Excel file, and it contains a number of tabs, and so we'll just go through each of those on the following slides. We have the simulation list, and this outlines each simulation from 2004 to the 2012 UFEs, and it indicates whether the simulation is used in Module 5 or in the UFE Prep face-to-face sessions or in the suggested study plan. And it also specifies the suggested time for each simulation. And so as I noted earlier, the 2012 UFE report won't be ready until late May of 2013. Now we have the study plan, and so the study plan helps students map out what they need to do to prepare for the UFE over the coming months. So we do recommend that students develop their plan and share it with their mentor prior to taking their study leave. We do provide a sample study plan in the binder file, and students can modify that to suit their own needs, so they don't have to follow exactly what we suggest. The CASB suggested study plan does start in the last week of May, and it lists activities right up until the UFE. And it's broken into two sections. So we have one for activities that lead up to the UFE Prep face-to-face session, and another that details what is covered each day of the face-to-face session, outlines 1 or 2 simulations to write and debrief daily after the session, and also it allocates a little bit of time for technical review as well. And so we'll discuss the specific activities that are included in this sample study plan a little bit later. So we also have the tracking tab, and this lists simulations in the same order as the initial simulation list, and students can note their performance in each competency area, and the grading breakdown in the tracking sheet is automatically updated. So each competency area also has its own tab where students can note some of the topics that are either strengths or weaknesses, and the date that they reviewed the topic, in their technical study as well. And then finally, we have a reflection tab, and this allows students to note kind of the bigger picture and the themes for each simulation. And they summarize what they've learned by writing and debriefing the simulation, and they also note what they'll focus on for the next simulation that they write. So let's spend a little bit more time on the study plan. So it does include 4 activities, and this is writing practice simulations, debriefing simulations, technical study and review, and also taking breaks to avoid burnout. So writing practice simulations allows students to understand the various simulation styles. They can also develop an approach for answering them and identify some of the technical areas that they need to focus on. Module 5 and the UFE Prep face-to-face session cover several simulations, and so do the in-house programs at CA training offices. The binder does include a list of each simulation from 2004 to 2012. UFEs, and it indicates whether the simulation is used in Module 5, the UFE Prep face-to-face sessions, or in the UFE Prep study plan. So you can find all of these simulations and the corresponding guides in the online UFE Prep Mentor module. We've also created a guide to approaching simulations as well as 2 planning tutorials to assist students. So you can find these resources in the UFE Prep Mentor module. Additionally, we do have a short presentation called Approaching a Simulation, and this provides some further guidance on case writing, and you can find that presentation in the Mentor Center on CASB's website. So we do recommend that students spend as much time debriefing a simulation as they do writing it. For each simulation, students can track their progress by competency area, technical area, and bigger picture in the binder. And the face-to-face portion of UFE Prep does cover debriefing in detail. And we've also created a guide to assist students in debriefing. So you can find the guide in the online UFE Prep Mentor module. So students will have developed a pretty strong technical foundation in modules 1 through 5, or their master's program. And additionally, the face-to-face portion of UFE Prep does include some technical review. And then in the weeks leading up to the UFE, students should really be refreshing their technical skills rather than developing them. So as we've mentioned previously, students can track and review their areas of technical strengths and weaknesses in their binder. And we do provide students with access to a number of technical resources. So these would include the CAS's ASB and the IFRS guides, and a number of guides from modules 1 through 5 as well. So this slide provides a snapshot of all the technical resources that are available to students. But you can definitely find all of these resources in the online UFE Prep Mentor module. Now, we also want to highlight a tool that was created last year, and that's Technical Moments. So these are a series of short videos that provide some additional guidance on some specific technical topics that students typically struggle with. So, for example, we do have one on foreign currency. And these videos are based on some areas that appear in simulations that students will be attempting in the face-to-face classroom portion of UFE Prep. And students can view the technical moments prior to attending the face-to-face session, and it will assist them when they attempt the simulations. So finally, to avoid burnout, we do recommend that students study from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday only. And 9 a.m. does reflect the UFE start time, so it's a good idea to get into the habit of starting at this time. We also suggest that students build their technical review time into their study plans, because if an unplanned event arises or if a student feels like they are starting to burn out, these technical review time slots can be used to have some time off from studying. So we'll summarize the activities that we've discussed so far. So students get access to the online UFE Prep materials on May 13th. And students will spend late May to mid-July, which is the period prior to the UFE Prep face-to-face session, preparing for the UFE. And then for students who are in Module 5, their weekly tasks pretty much prepare them for the UFE. And in the sample study plan, we've suggested some alternate activities to help students who are not in Module 5 during this period. And then the face-to-face component of UFE Prep runs from July 22nd to 26th and July 29th to August 2nd. And so students don't need to do any additional self-directed study in the evenings and weekends during this period. And students write a simulated UFE August 6th to 8th, and that's in actual UFE writing locations wherever possible. And then from mid-August to early September, students would be writing and debriefing 1 to 2 simulations each day, and they also allocate some time for technical review as part of their study plan. And then finally, students write the UFE on September 10th to 12th. So now we'll move on to what you can do to help your students as they prepare for the UFE. And then before we discuss how specifically you can support your students, we'll take a look at some of the characteristics of a typical UFE mentor. So a UFE mentor should be someone who recently wrote the UFE, and this is simply because they need to be prepared to answer some exam-related questions. And a mentor should be a strong communicator and be comfortable with giving some open and honest feedback as well. And to facilitate that, sometimes it's better that the UFE mentor and the student aren't close friends. A UFE mentor should be technically proficient, obviously, because they'll help the student address some of their technical weaknesses. And then finally, it's also beneficial for the UFE mentor to have a problem-solving approach that might be complementary to the students. And this is because a UFE mentor who thinks a little bit differently will be better able to identify the weaknesses and offer some suggestions for improvement. So now we'll get into what you can do to support your students. And at the beginning of the relationship, you can review your student's study plan to get an understanding of how they're going to prepare for the UFE. And you can also jointly set expectations for how you're going to work together over the coming months. You can also expect to answer a number of technical and exam-related questions that your student might have throughout the summer. And you should assess some of the student's simulations and provide feedback and suggestions on their approach and their technical skills as well. And then finally, you'll provide some emotional support and be a source of motivation to your student when the going gets tough, because preparing for the UFE can be tiring, and pep talks are required. So at the beginning of the mentoring relationship, you and your student together should be determining how you're going to engage with each other. And this starts with reviewing the student's study plan. It's helpful at this point because it sets the stage for what's going to come over the summer. And then with respect to simulations, you should decide how many you will assess and when the student will submit the simulations for assessment and when you'll provide feedback. With respect to meetings, you and your students should decide how often you're going to meet, and some prefer regularly scheduled weekly meetings, others prefer meeting on an as-needed basis. It's really up to the two of you to decide how you're going to interact and how they'll take place. Is it, in person, Skype, email, phone, that type of thing. So we do recommend that you evaluate 3 simulations, and one would be at the beginning of your student's study, and this would serve as a benchmark for their performance. Another one would be about 1 to 2 weeks after the simulated UFE, and this one would gauge how your student has progressed. And then finally, one about 1 week to 10 days before the UFE, and this would highlight any areas that your student would need to focus on during the final days leading up to the evaluation. So to summarize, we'll just go back to our previous timeline. So we've outlined the student activities in green, and we'll summarize mentoring activities in red. So early on, you'll review your student's study plan, and you'll jointly set expectations for the coming months. You'll also assess and provide feedback on a simulation fairly early in the student's study, because this is the one that's going to serve as that benchmark for the student's performance. Then after the simulated UFE, you'll once again assess and provide feedback on a simulation to gauge your student's progress. And then 7 to 10 days prior to the UFE, you'll assess and provide feedback on a final simulation. And this one will help your student identify any areas that they should be focusing on in the final days of their study. And throughout the summer, you'll also answer any technical and exam-related questions your student might have and offer general support as needed. So next, we'll come back to the resources that are available to assist you and your students. All the resources that we've discussed are available to your students as part of their online component of CASB's UFE Prep program. And they're also available to you in the UFE Prep Mentor module. So the module contains the exact same resources that the student module contains, but the only thing it does not include is access to a facilitator, because that's something that only a student would require. In the Mentor module, you can access the orientation guide, the binders, the sample study plan, the guides to approaching and debriefing a simulation, and the planning tutorials. The UFE simulations and evaluations guide from 2004 onward, the technical guides and tutorials for CASB, IFRS, and the CASs, and then some select technical guides from modules 1 to 5, as well as those technical moments videos that we discussed earlier. So you have 3 sources of mentoring information that are available to you. We have the Mentor Center, the CASB Mentor modules, and the UFE Prep Mentor module. So the Mentor Center contains a number of mentoring resources. There's an overview of some common mentoring practices at training offices. There's a general framework for mentoring students through modules 1 to 5. There's some module-specific mentoring tips, and there's also some additional guidance on some specific topics, such as case writing and critical thinking. And there's also, this is where we post the recordings of any webinars that we hold. And so it's located on the CASB website, and it's open to everyone. We also have 2 different types of mentor modules. So we have the CASB mentor modules, and they contain all the learning materials from modules 1 through 5. So they provide you with the access to the same materials that students engage with as they're going through the CASB modules. And it also contains a link to the Mentor Center resources. And so the CASB modules are housed in Desire to Learn, and since they contain proprietary information, you do have to register to gain access to these modules. And then the UFE Prep Mentor module, which is the one that we've discussed today, also contains the learning materials from CASB's UFE Prep program, and it does also link out to the Mentor Center. And again, it provides you with access to all the materials that your students are using to prepare for the UFE. And again, because it's housed in Desire to Learn, you do have to register to get access to that. So finally, we'll just let you know how to register to get access. So unlike the Mentor Center, it does contain all learning materials from CASB's UFE Prep program. So you have to access it by registering. And who can register? It's qualified CAs or some CASB students who've already successfully completed the UFE. We also allow HR and student contacts at CA training offices to register, even if they're not CAs. And then to register, just complete the UFE Mentor registration application, and that's on the forms section of our CASB website. The registration is valid for 1 year, and the content is refreshed each May, and so we contact mentors each spring to renew the registration for the coming year. And even though we didn't specifically discuss those CASB mentor modules in today's session, I also wanted to highlight how you can register for that. So again, they contain all the learning materials from modules 1 to 5, and you do have to register to obtain access. And it's qualified CAs or CASB students who are more senior to the students that they're mentoring can register. And similarly, we also allow HR and student contacts at CA training offices to register, even if they're not CAs. And we have a registration form on our form section of the CASB website for the CASB mentor registration. And for these modules, they're refreshed with each session, and registration is valid until mid-October, and so we contact mentors in the fall to refresh their registration. So that covers all the formal material that we had for you today. So at this point, we're going to take your questions. I'd like to remind you that if you do have a question, please submit it using the Q&A function in the live meeting screen. So I'll take a moment to check in to see if Jennifer Reed, our CASB UFE Prep Program Director, is on the line.
Hi, Lara. Yes, I am.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. So I'll read the questions, and Jennifer will answer them. So we do have a couple of questions to begin with. And the first is, when do students typically take UFE study leave?
That's a good question. It really depends on the student and the firm, but what we typically see is students taking study leave 1 to 2 weeks prior to the UFE Prep program. Now, that's not required by any means, but if the students are able to do so, it just allows them to sort of decompress, especially if they've just come out of Module 5, and sort of regain their focus for entering into the UFE Prep program. So ideally, I would say 1 week to 2 weeks prior to the start of UFE Prep.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, and the next question, what type of alternate activities do you suggest for students currently not in Module 5?
So again, a good question. On the UFE Prep D2L site, you'll find the candidate binder I know that you mentioned in the presentation. And the third tab of the binder contains a suggested study plan for students from May 20th all the way through to the start of UFE Prep. And many of the activities are actually divided for those students currently in Module 5 and for those students who have completed Module 5. So I would recommend that the student be referred to that pre-face-to-face study plan and then pick their path either in Module 5 or having completed Module 5 for a list of suggested activities.
Great. Thank you. All right. So the next question we have relates to marking simulations. And so should this be only one question, a comp or a non-comp, or is there a preference for kind of reviewing comps and a couple of non-comps counting as one simulation?
I would actually suggest that they be non-comps. Non-comps are obviously shorter simulations, anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes. And oftentimes any issues that students are having with breadth level 1 or depth level 2 will be identified on multi-simulations. So many of the sort of the pitfalls that students encounter, especially early in the process, will be demonstrated with a non-comp. So I don't think you're losing anything by marking those. Now, that being said, if you can have an arrangement where the student write a comp and you mark that, that could also work as well. But for time purposes, I would probably suggest non-comps.
Thank you. Okay, and the next question is there such a thing as too much coaching?
Ooh, very good question. I think you're going to want to coach as much as the student wants you to, right? So you're going to have to read the cues of the student. If you feel that the student is resistant to some feedback, you may want to step back a little and give them a bit of space because it is a very stressful process. But you may find that some students really need that additional coaching and support, in which case I think it's important to provide it to them.
Great, thank you. And so the next question I think I can address, the question is there a cost to registration for the mentor modules? And no, there isn't. It is free of charge. All you have to do is fill out the registration form on our CASB website and submit it to us, and you'll be registered. Okay. The next question is, do experienced writers have access to the UFE Prep website?
That's a good question. They do if they register to do so. So they do have to register and pay a fee. Now, it's not the full fee that a first-time writer would pay, but they are able to obtain access if they do pay that reduced amount.
Okay.
And actually, Laura, I just wanted to interrupt here and just mention that the 2012 UFE report is actually being made available. So it's made available on the UFE Prep site for mentors, students, and facilitators. So it's a little bit earlier than last year.
Oh, perfect. Okay, and the next question is, should we encourage students to study with at least another student if possible?
Absolutely. We do encourage students to form a study group if possible. So that would be working with 1 to 2 other students. And that's quite important, again, to provide kind of consistent feedback between the students. So, yeah, that's important.
Excellent. And the next question, what, if anything, do you suggest for mentors who are not recent UFE writers?
For mentors who are not recent UFE writers, I would definitely suggest that they spend some time on the UFE Prep Mentor website, familiarizing themselves with the UFE simulations from 2004 all the way up to 2012. They're available now on the site, and also going through the technical guides, making sure that they're up to speed on their technical content.
Perfect. Okay, we do have one other question, and it's from Lenka. And what I'll do, it's a very specific question, Lenka, and so I will follow up with you directly on how to treat your situation. So we will get you an answer, but we'll do it offline. I think that covers all the submitted questions so far. We'll just pause for a few seconds to see if anyone else has any additional questions. Seeing no additional questions come in, I will say that thank you for participating in today's session, and we do value the critical role that you play as mentors. If you do have some questions that come to mind subsequently, feel free to email me directly, and we'll make sure that you get an answer. A recording of today's session will be posted on the Mentor Center in about a week or so. So thanks again, and this concludes today's session.